Hey Derek, how you doing?
I'm awesome, Will. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Cool.
I wanted to introduce you to my viewers on the channel because I really, you got some really good results the last couple of years with your muscle growth from the training, and I really like your channel. You talk about, the training and the diet and, compassion, and I think it'll be really helpful to people to show that, plant-based eaters can grow muscle and all the other benefits. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Um, Before we get into the details, because I want to talk about your training regimen mostly, just to help
Yep.
people help people understand what they should be doing, what they can do if they're interested. Um, but just prior to that, why did you go plant based, and when was that?
All right. Well, it's been in a couple stages, I think, for sure. To go back pretty far to sort of when the seed was, I guess, first planted, when I really made the connection between like sort of health and lifestyle and like longevity and living a disease-free and energetic life. Uh, I guess you'd have to say, well, to cut right into it, I lost my father when I was 16. I was pretty young, so I'm 32 now, and he was a marathon runner. He was a healthy guy. Well, so I thought. Really healthy guy. He was my soccer coach. He was really trim, never overweight. And he got esophageal cancer, just kind of out of the blue. He wasn't really a smoker. He had been early in his life, but and then it kind of, went around his body and eventually went into his colon, and that's what he died of. He died of colon cancer. And I didn't really associate his previous diet at the time with sort of his disease state. But I did notice when he was in the hospital, the food that they were giving him just definitely wasn't health promoting food. And I knew this like right from the beginning. It was just this kind of, they were giving him like jello and microwave vegetables and stuff like that. And I knew that it was not health promoting. So, that was a big shocker to me, and it kind of left this sort of, this thought in my head, like, man, I think, this diet, at least if it doesn't have to do with longevity, it definitely has to do with sort of your healing and that sort of stuff. So, fast forward a few years, I was dating a girl in 2009, and she was going to school for nutrition, the same sort of schooling that I did. And she was learning all about the benefits of organic, and she was, her eyes were being opened to the terrible industries that the meat and the dairy and that sort of stuff were. And she started to make us buy more organic at the grocery store, and she started to make me kind of buy the ethical meats and the happy eggs and that sort of stuff. And she'd leave her books here and there strategically, so I'd kind of pick them up and I'd read them. And like I think Skinny Bitch was one of the first ones, kind of a funny book for me to read. But I thought, I saw that and I thought, what the heck is this girl reading? So I had to pick it up and read it a little bit. And I really realized, like, yeah, they are not, kind industries. And here I am, I'm like owning cats and owning dogs and having pets and really caring for these and calling myself an animal lover. And, not really demonstrating that through what I was eating. So I started to buy more of the free range eggs and the grass fed meat and that sort of stuff, and it got really expensive. But I was really focused on doing it. I was hell bent on doing this, but we started to become broke, and it was really expensive to do it. It is incredibly expensive to eat that way. And so I naturally just started to eat less and less of it, and without the intent of going vegan. And I noticed some amazing health benefits. I started to feel better. I'd wake up, like I'd jump out of bed without any problems. I'd have tons of energy. I wouldn't have to rub the sleep out of my eyes. I just felt amazing. My digestion got a lot better. My skin cleared up, which had always been a problem for me since I was young. And so from then on, I just, I knew that it had to be the way. So I definitely sort of dabbled in it for a few years, and it wasn't probably until 2011 or 2012 that I really, took it seriously and thought I'm going to, really read all the ingredients and not consume any animal byproducts at all. And since then, it's been, I have not turned back. It's just been amazing, and it's, I don't think I know I'll never go back.
Yeah. When you were switching, were you afraid of like missing nutrients or losing any muscle or whatever? Any kind of fears that way?
Well, I didn't have any muscle at the time, so that wasn't really a concern for me. I was really thin. I was really focused on running and on cycling and that sort of stuff, even back then. Well, I say that I wasn't that focused on it, but I was happy enough that, like, I was fairly lean. and then I could do those things and without any problem. So no, I wasn't too concerned about that. But yeah, definitely as far as the missing nutrients. I trusted her because she was going to school for it, and she assured me that everything was going to be fine like that. But yeah, no, not too much. If I can get into a funny story, my mom, when I started to, it's kind of a funny story, I think. When I started to eat vegan, I was eating a ton of yams, I was eating a ton of carrots, and I just loved steamed vegetables. And my palms started to get orange, and I guess I took on a little bit of an orange hue. And I was living with her for a year at the time, and she got so worried about me. And it's funny because all my life she's telling me, eat your vegetables, and here I am eating only vegetables, and she's just worried sick about me, thinking I'm going to be sick. So she sends me to the doctor. And I get to the doctor, and I tell her, my mom wants me to get a blood test, and I show her my palms, and I said, because my palms are orange. And the doctor just kind of laughed, and she just said, that you're eating a lot of vegetables, aren't you? And I said, yes. I said, yeah, I am. I'm eating exclusively vegetables. And she just laughed, and she said, it's keratinosis or keratinosis or however you want to pronounce it. And she said, I'll do a blood test on you, but there's no need. You can just tell your mom that it's just the antioxidants being put into your skin. So I thought that was kind of a funny story. So my mom was worried. Everybody around me was worried a lot more than me. Everyone was like, well, you're not going to get enough protein, of course, and, iron and this and that. And it wasn't really a concern for me. And those sort of deficiencies, I think, happen so slowly over time that you have time to educate yourself. So it's nothing that you have to, if you go vegan tomorrow, you don't have to worry about taking 12 tomorrow or the next day, that sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely, it's not that I didn't pay attention to any of those nutrients that you're missing in a plant-based or in a meat-eating diet. But it just, it wasn't anything that had scared me off. Once I learned about the industry and the terrible ways that the animals are treated, it wasn't going to be a concern for me. If I was a little bit deficient in vitamin D or iron or whatever for a little while, it was a small price to pay in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. At least my experience has been when I was prior to going plant-based vegan, I never thought about nutrients at all.
No.
I might have thought, well, just to be safe, I'll take a multivitamin, just to cover my basis. But I never thought about protein, iron, and all stuff. And now in this world, I guess because there's a lot of health conscious people, you start to realize that people tell you to drink milk for calcium, eat meat for protein, fish for omega-3, and I never thought about nutrients at all, and I still don't. And reading books like Whole by T. Colin Campbell, understanding reductionism versus holism, where you just eat the whole food. But every day for the last few years I've been doing this, you get so many questions about all the nutrients. And it's funny because when people go vegan, they think, well, what do I do about this and that? But they never really cared about it when we were going to McDonald's or eating pizza. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, that's great. So what I wanted to talk about was, when people see your results, mostly from the muscle perspective, the muscle gaining and the lean, obviously the leanness as well, body fat. Wanted to talk about your training regimen. And one interesting thing that I like about what you're doing is the calisthenics aspect, because that's what I do. It's kind of fun. I feel like a kid again when I'm doing on the monkey bars or at a playground or even at home, handstands, things where you used to do maybe when you were a kid. So how would you describe your workouts? Let's start with the calisthenics. What exercises do you do typically?
Right. Well, the way I would describe it, it's definitely calisthenics movements, but I can't say it's entirely body weight. I definitely add weight to my workouts, whether it be a weighted backpack for push-ups or a weight belt for dips, then that sort of thing. So I do add weight, but I do like the sort of being able to work out outside and be able to work out with minimal equipment, in a very simple manner. I really like the idea that if I go on vacation or if I'm staying at a friend's house or whatever, I know if I just have a floor and 6 square feet, I can pretty much do an awesome workout, and I don't have to worry about finding the nearest gym and that sort of thing. So that's my main thing with calisthenics, why I love it. So sorry again.
What exercises would you say? What exercises do you do typically?
Yeah, well, definitely pull-ups for sure. and chin-ups are like two of the main things that I do. And then push-ups, like it's so simple. And sometimes I think, man, I should really branch out and do other things. But I do so many variations of all those exercises that it stays pretty exciting. But definitely like those three. I have dip bars that I use, and then I also have like gymnast rings. And I've started to use those more because I'm really seeing the benefits of actually the stabilizing muscles and the balance and everything that it takes to use those. So I definitely kind of surround my workout around those sorts of things. And I get asked a lot like how I split my workouts up and if I do certain body parts one day and whatever the next day. And for a little while I was trying to do I'll focus on shoulders today and I'll focus on back on another day and this, but it doesn't really. For me, I don't like to have to think that much about my workouts. So most of the days most weeks I'll do push, pull, splits basically. And most days, like for one day, I'll just do all pull exercises where I just do all pull-ups, all chin-ups, and that sort of variation. I love holding onto the bar where it's kind of, rather than being sort of across you this way and pulling on each side, I find you get a really, really good a good stretch on your lats, and then also you can pull really, really deep and get those biceps going a lot. And then for push days, I'll just do push-ups, handstand push-ups. What else do I do? And then dips on those days, and a variation of sort of high rep, and then weighted ones where I do really low reps, where I put as much weight as I can around my waist, and only do 3 or 4 or 5 reps sometimes. And then the next set I'll just be doing without any weight and do 20 or 30 reps. So I really, really try and switch it up. And then, with that being said, some days where I'm not feeling strong, and if, grip strength is a big thing when you do calisthenics. And if I find my grip strength isn't good one day, I'll just play around and I'll just practice handstands, and I'll just sort of crawl on the ground and do jumping squats and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I just noticed yesterday I was doing some pull-ups, and it's kind of your, you start wide, go narrow, and then do that 3 or 4 times. And my hands, they're starting to get some. It was sore, like around the calluses, like right around here.
Yeah.
Because there's a little bit of foam on the bar, but not a lot. So, do you think like wearing gloves or something, or just kind of getting used to it?
I don't know. Like I sometimes wear gloves. These workout bars that are near my house are metal. And in the winter here, it gets really cold, like as you can imagine. And I do wear gloves then, but I really think that there is something something special about the connection that you get when your hand is directly touching the surface that you're, sort of gripping. The bar I have here at home is like a bamboo bar that I made for myself. And for anyone out there, if you're making your own bar, like look into getting a good solid piece of bamboo, because when your hands grab it, it's such a natural feeling. And it stays warm in the winter, which is the nicest thing. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do wear gloves sometimes, but I find they kind of bunch up and they just kind of end up annoying me. And once I warm up enough, I end up taking them off anyways.
Yeah.
And after time, your hands get strong enough. I mean, I guess if you're really having a hard time, you could probably put some chalk on your hands. It would help. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of gloves. I tried for a little while, and I tried cutting the fingers out of them and doing it like that, but I didn't find that it helped too much.
Okay, cool. So when you do the weighted pull-ups, let's say, would you do your first set weighted and then go to sort of like a reverse pyramid or something, or how do you decide when you're doing weighted pull-ups versus non-weighted pull-ups?
Yeah, most of the time I definitely do them. I do them that way. Like I warm up first, where I'll do just 5 of whatever exercises I'm doing, and I'll just do that for a small circuit for a couple minutes just to get my body really warmed up. If not that, I'll skip, I'll jump rope, or I'll go for a jog around the block or something. And then, once I jump into it, I find when I'm strongest, and your grip strength is the strongest for sure, I put a bunch of weight on, and I'll do that, and I'll do, basically I try to do it where I can only do about 5 to 7 reps with whatever weight it is. Sometimes that's 25 pounds, and if I'm feeling strong that day, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's even a bit more. And I'll do that, 5 or 6 times, and then I'll drop one of the weights, and then I'll continue there. And then I'll once I've done that, I'll just take the weights completely off and do that. So my goal at the end of the workout is to wear I'm, my muscles are so exhausted that even just like a chin up without any weight, I can, only maybe muscle up or muscle one or two of them out.
Yeah, this is the key area because that I want to talk about and focus on. And I've been looking into, you know, building muscle, like what, and there's so many different theories and strength versus hypertrophy, hypertrophy, like lower reps, high reps. And I've been watching this guy, Red Delta Project, Matt, and he talks about basically fatiguing the muscles. And they always say, well, if you do low reps, you're going to build strength, and if you do higher reps, you're going to gain, the hypertrophy. But what he was saying is that when you use a heavier weight, or if you use a heavier weight first, you're kind of fatiguing. It's a quicker way to fatigue the muscles, and then when you go off the weights, you're going to fatigue the remaining muscle fibers. Whereas people think it's like two separate things. You're strong or you're building muscle, and it's not really. Strength is kind of like recruiting more muscle fibers at one time to be able to lift a heavier weight. But I find did you find that like you don't want to add the weights until you can do a certain number of reps, like a certain number of pull-ups, and then you start adding weight to your routine to kind of make it more difficult?
Yeah, for sure. Like I totally agree with that concept. I mean, I don't think that you can split it up into just mass and then just definition, that sort of thing. I think it all comes like together. But what was the question again? Sorry.
Well, do you find I guess what you did was when did you start adding weight once you
Right.
could do so many reps or so many sets and reps of
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, if if you put 50 pounds around your waist and you can only do one chin up, I don't really think that's going to help you all that much. I mean, you do have to start somewhere. So if you can only do one chin up without any weight, that's a good place to start. But I definitely found, yeah, once the reason I started that, when you see, if anyone's seen my video, this sort of 2-year transformation that I have, up until that two year mark, I hadn't really been adding a ton of weight. I just started to in the last couple of months, before I took that last kind of photo, which was last summer. I just started adding weight to that, and it wasn't until I was really comfortable doing 15 to 20 sort of reps of chin-ups that I started to add weight, because I noticed my body did sort of plateau, and I found that I wasn't really gaining any mass. I was just kind of getting stronger, and my body was just getting leaner. And I think that's kind of, sort of natural evolution of your body. If you're doing a repetitive movement over and over again, it's going to try and, figure itself out so that it can do that the best. So whether that's, getting leaner or building more muscle, and in my case it was getting more dense sort of muscle and getting leaner, and I was able to just do chin-ups forever, and it wasn't really helping me sort of gain the strength or the size that I wanted to. I definitely wanted to try and put on a little bit of size because I've been a skinny guy for most of my life.
Yeah, that's an interesting part too, is that the ectomorph and the mesomorph. Like, one thing I want people to understand is, well, like, you've got 2 years. It's a fairly good chunk of time, and it's not like some people might want instant results, and there's people that might have been doing weights for way longer than you have. But you know, you were saying, I think, that the muscle gain wasn't a huge amount, and then the leanness as well that shows the definition. Like, how much muscle do you think you put on from that 2-year period?
It's hard to say. I think I probably put on I would say only about 6 or 7 pounds, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a heavy guy, like, at all. And it's so hard to say because, yeah, I have sort of leaned out, but I've gained a little bit of mass. So yeah, probably 7 or 8 pounds, I would say, of sort of lean muscle at the very most. Maybe even a little bit less, but not a whole lot. But I think, yeah, when a lot of people see results that they want to emulate, they see people that are sort of shredded and lean, and they think, oh, I want to look like that, and then they end up just like smashing a bunch of protein and lifting really, really heavy weights to try and get as big as they can, and never really seem to be happy with the results. I should, that's kind of generalizing, but from what I see in the industry, it just seems like the way that it goes. And so I think a combination of sort of getting a good base of strength and having some leanness will really get results that you're happy with.
Yeah, like, when I did I went plant-based end of June 2013, So it's over 2.5 years, 2 3/4 years, something like that. And what I did was I didn't want to do anything crazy like restrict um, like bread, or things like that. Like I don't eat tons of it, but I didn't want to do anything that I couldn't sustain. So I still ate lots of. I ate like mashed potatoes, and just starch solution essentially. And I wanted to see. I was very patient from that perspective. I wanted to just eat whatever, eat until you're full. Eat all these plant-based foods. I don't eat many nuts and the higher calorie foods, and see kind of where I would get to, naturally. And I got pretty lean. Like I've never been a lean person in my mind. Like I've always had extra weight. Like that's how I differentiate, say, you and me as far as. And I think it's important to bring up this issue and we'll talk more about like your calories and stuff like that. But there's people that seem to be lean and struggle to gain weight, fat, or muscle, and there's other people that can easily gain fat and maybe a little easier gain muscle. And I think my theory is kind of like how much these people absorb calories, like maybe through their gut bacteria, stuff like that. Because when I ate a lot of crap in the past, I gained 35 plus pounds, and my wife gained 5 to 8 pounds maybe. And so I'm looking at it like ectomorph versus mesomorph, and that might affect how people need to train and eat as well. Like what are your thoughts on those two different body types and how they should treat them, how they should do the work?
Well, I haven't given it a ton of thought. I've always just kind of like I was given what I have, and I just work the best with it that I can. But even even when I was eating a pretty unhealthy diet and some really high calorie foods, even before I went vegan, I stayed pretty lean. Like even though I'd get a little bit softer around the midsection, I would always stay fairly lean and have some sort of definition. So that's kind of what just to not to get too off topic, but it was definitely a factor in that didn't really help me sort of get healthy, because I always kind of looked lean and I looked thin, no matter if I was eating cake and ice cream and every night, or trying to eat really lean. It never really seemed to affect my body much. But I know for a lot of people that it does, and I don't know if it does have to do with genetics or if it has to do with your gut bacteria. Probably a bit of a combination of the both. But I feel that, definitely, there's definitely those two body types out there. And right now I'm having to sort of just, maintain a little bit of size. Like I'm not huge by any means, but to maintain a bit of size, I'm having to eat a ton of food, more than I want to, more than I would ever recommend any of my clients eat. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, and sometimes I'm, not happy doing it. But just to see the scale go up like a pound or 2 pounds, and I try not to pay too much attention to the scale, but it's hard not to when you're trying to get results. I'd have to eat a lot. I have to eat a lot more than I'm sure a lot of other people have to eat to gain any size. So with that being said, I mean, you just have to kind of figure out what your body style kind of responds to. But I think eating high carb, low fat for sure is definitely the best way for me. I'm not going to just go and eat a bunch of fatty foods just because hopefully I gain a little bit of weight out of that. I don't think it's going to be the weight that I want anyways. And it depends in the world.
Yeah, because I'm looking at myself, and I'm for 2.5 something years, I've been able to just eat McDougall style starch solution, low fat, high carb, and I'm leaner than I've ever been, but I don't look exactly like you do. I don't have. It's getting closer, as far as ab definition. And the funny thing is, I've never been even as lean as I have been now. I've always easily gained weight. I eat the standard Canadian diet, and I had extra weight on me, and then over the last 10, 20 years, as you get into older and working and eating junk and being stressed out, definitely gained a lot more. But there's a difference. One of the things I noticed when I chatted with you is upping the game as far as the workouts go, because once at first I couldn't even do one chin up. So I did negatives,
Yep.
and then eventually I could do chin-ups, and then then I went to pull-ups. And then once you can do like a set of 8 or 10, it's like, okay, you're kind of like bored, or maybe you reach a plateau. And I think that's where, for a little while, I've been sort of stuck. And then you're looking for that way to make more advances. And what I noticed when I talked to you was, number one, drop sets and more reps and sets than I'm doing. Like I think I need to, and I'm encouraging, like how many sets would you say? 4 plus, and a lot more reps as well. It seems like you're really fatiguing yourself.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's more time. Like I try to keep my workouts under an hour, 45 minutes to an hour for sure, with like minimal rest in between sets. Just this, just enough to let my grip strength sort of recover. So I wish I had a more definite answer on sort of sets and reps that I do. But yeah, basically I'll just do sort of like 3 or 4 different movements, and I will basically just do a circuit, and I'll just cycle through them. Occasionally I'll do a sort of more of like a bodybuilding style, I guess, where I do the one movement for 4 reps, and then move on to another. But I kind of get bored that way. I guess I have like a bit of ADD or whatever. So I like to, I'll do a bunch of chin-ups, and like you said, like, yeah, I like the style where I go wide, a little narrow, or really narrow, and then from there, I'll find another pull exercise that I do. So I often sort of like lean back, and I'll use my workout rings, and I'll do a pull like that, and then I'll move into that pulling the bar on either side of my shoulder and pulling myself up like that, and then go back to the pull ups and do that, and I'll just keep doing that circuit for 45 minutes.
Do you rest in
And
between
add weight. So.
when you go from like those wide pull-ups to narrow, and then you go to the rings, would you take a little rest in between those? Or is that
Yeah, I
continuous?
mean, just enough to sort of catch my breath, so that I can perform the next exercise really well. But I try not to, let my heart rate get too low, and I think that's a big factor for getting your body like lean and shredded. I think a lot of people. Occasionally I'll go to the gym. I've been doing that lately for my like leg workouts. I've been going and because they have like a squat rack there, so I've been doing like heavy squats. My girlfriend loves going to the gym. That's where she is actually right now, and I. I find that I look around and I see the people that are kind of getting results, and I see the people that aren't getting the results there. And the people that keep their intensity high, that move quickly from one machine to another, or from one workout to another, are the ones that seem to be getting better results. And the ones that lift really really heavy for a few reps, sit around on their phone, check their Instagram, that sort of thing, and then get back at it. Yeah, they may have some size and they may have some good strength, but they're not really getting that sort of, that shredded, ripped looking body. So I really think, yeah, keeping the intensity up, not resting too long in between sets, but you got to find what works for you. And if you can't, if you don't want to just like crush your adrenals, for an hour, just trying to get shredded and, have absolutely no rest in between your workouts, and that's not going to help anybody.
Yeah. I noticed that when um, I was doing kind of body weight, and I was doing like convict conditioning where there's a progression. And so, like, for example, if you do regular push-ups and then you kind of go narrow, or you put one arm out like an archer and you start to put more weight on one hand and making it more difficult. But, then I went and said, well, I'm going to put some weight on like a backpack. And I noticed that I felt a lot more intensity, like because of the weight. Like the next day or two, there was this feeling of fatigue, or whatever you want to call it, that I hadn't felt before. So I think somehow the weights were, because I know some people say you don't need to necessarily add body weight, or maybe it's too soon to add more weight, but I did feel that it pushed something neurologically, or whatever you want to call it, more so than just the body weight. Like, and so have you noticed that? And also, are you able to do that one day after the other? Like if you did weighted pull-ups, could you do that every day, or would you have to do it only so many days a week?
Yeah, it's definitely like there's definitely something to it, something to adding weight. It kind of, I think it definitely like tricks your body into thinking that you're heavier. It's a pretty simple sort of concept, and I can't really, I won't do weighted pull-ups 2 days in a row. I'll usually wait a day in between. where I will, do like my push routine in between that. And then if I'm still feeling tired the next day and I can't do anything weighted, then yeah, I'll just have like a high rep day and I'll do them without any added weights, and just kind of have a little bit more fun with that. But yeah, it's all about just kind of listening to your body and don't. It's good to push yourself, but at the same time, you don't want to push yourself too hard because you do want to. The results come in long term. They don't come over a week or over 2 weeks or even 2 months. They come over a couple of years. So
Yeah. Yeah. So based on chatting with you now and before, I think if people are plateauing or having trouble gaining muscle, other than consistency, like a lot of people aren't doing it consistently, but I think based on talking to you, you're doing it. You're doing more sets. You're doing more intensity than I think a lot of people are. And even myself, like I sort of thought to myself, like once I hit that 10 to 12 pull-ups and I could do a set or two of those, it just kind of got boring almost. And the other thing I have trouble doing, like the same set over and over again. Like if I do push-ups, do I want to do 4 sets of like, especially if you're doing more than 10 or 12, it's like, so what you said about potentially a circuit or switching, not necessarily doing them one after the other, but doing other things, it could be a good idea as well, where it could make it more interesting.
yeah, exactly. And I always have a few exercises sort of in my back pocket that I can always do if I get bored or if I get stuck. And I find myself sort of thinking like, oh, what should I do next or whatever. And just a couple things that I really, really like to do that are fun for me that I'll just sort of, if I notice I'm sitting there sort of twiddling my thumbs or waiting too long in between sets, I'll just like flash into it and I'll do that. Whether it be like mountain climbers or just like close grip explosive chin ups or sort of like an ab workout or something like that. It's a really good thing to sort of throw in between sets so that you don't get bored and to switch it up. But yeah.
Okay. So like just to be clear, like how often would you, if you do, when you said a push, a pull, and legs, let's say, would that be like 3 days in a row and then a day rest and another 3 days of that, or is it continue 6 days? Like how do you do that
Yeah,
during the week?
I'll probably do it. I'll probably do 6 days. So I'll do like a push day, a pull day, then legs and sort of cardio on the same day, and then I'll do another push and pull, and then maybe have a rest day after that.
And speaking of cardio, because you're trying to gain muscle and you're naturally lean, I guess. Do you do how much cardio do you do specifically? Like, what would you do?
Yeah, right. Well, I run a little bit, but not too much. Usually just to warm up. Like right now, I'm not doing a lot of cardio. I have to admit, partly because it's like winter time here in Vancouver, in Canada here in BC, and it's really wet. So I love riding my bike. I love running in the trails, which I can still do if it's rainy, but it's just not nearly as fun. So I've just been keeping my workouts like really intense and keeping the intensity really high, and that's been enough to sort of keep me lean. I have been a runner in the past, and I get pretty sort of not obsessed, but I like to be good at what I do. So if I go out for a 5K run, I like to smash it, and I like to see my time really good. And it frustrates me if I don't get to run a lot, and I notice that time slipping. So I kind of have to, I don't necessarily think it's going to steal my gains or anything, but it's hard to focus on too many things in life. You can only be good at so much. So I definitely I'll incorporate some good cardio a few days out of the week, but it's not something that I'm doing every day. But for some people, I think if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to get more shredded, I think it definitely can help.
So, like, what would you advise for? I mean, there's running, cycling. How long would you say somebody should, if they're trying to lose some fat?
Um, Well, I mean, hard for me to answer because I've never been overweight. Like, thank goodness, I've always been kind of lean. I've definitely been soft in the past, um, but I would say, just long enough that you're sweating but not too long where it's too daunting for you to get out there and do it. If I say that you should go out there and run for an hour, but you're only able to run for 10 minutes, then you're never going to get out there and do it. So I think getting out, just getting out there half an hour. 45 minutes, push yourself, make sure you're sweating by the end of it, breathing hard throughout the whole thing. is really important. And I always tell people, like, to help motivate me at least, is that like putting on your shoes, tying your shoes up is the hardest part. Like once you're out there actually running, even if it's raining or whatever, like that's easy. You're already there. You've already committed to doing it. But actually, like, putting your running shorts on, tying up your shoes, and getting out the door is the absolute hardest part of the whole thing. So just once you're there, you're already done.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I think I did a video on this where it's kind of your concept of pain and pleasure. Like if you think, oh, I'm going to work out for an hour and a half, it's like, oh, I'm sweaty, or I got to go to the gym, so you don't want to do it. But I'll sit there and say, oh, I'm just going to drop down and do a set of push-ups, and then that might turn into a longer workout. But it's that initial perception of what you're going to, the effort, and the time. So I've got stuff at home, and it's great for me to just go start doing something because I'm not thinking, oh, I'm going to do this really long, painful workout. It's just do. What do you think about splitting or spreading out exercise throughout the day? Like if you, instead of doing pull-ups in one session, if somebody was doing a certain volume over a period of time, like whenever during the day, do you think that has less benefit?
Yeah, I think it definitely has less benefits for sure. And when I was in school, we kept learning about sort of how it can tax your adrenal glands and tire you out over time when you have your workouts over too long of a period of time. And I don't know if they were necessarily referring to that, like if you have a chin-up bar in your doorway and every time you walk past it you do 5 chin-ups. I don't think it's referring to that really. I think it's kind of referring to people that do 2-3 hour long workouts. But I think, yeah, having a short burst, like intense workout, I think is a really good way of doing it. If you watch like somebody like a bricklayer or something like that that's doing a repetitive motion all day, like you see those guys and they have like they'll have massive forearms, especially electricians. I was an electrician for a while, and I can look back at the pictures where I was doing that, and I had like I know exactly the pictures where I was an electrician because I had this huge forearm, and it was just from turning wires and hammering things all day. But yeah, I don't think that it's like all that sustainable, and and I don't know if you're really going to get sort of the results that you're looking for. I do think though that you can obviously build a good amount of mass and strength by doing that. But for me, it's like just with like my lifestyle and having to work and do other things and wanting to enjoy life, I find that if I can keep it into that sort of 45-minute to an hour time frame, it's easy for me to wrap my mind around that, and I can just hammer out a really hard workout and just grunt through it no matter how I'm feeling.
Yeah. Um, would you, when you're recommending, like, say, a diet, obviously, plant-based, would you say people just eat until they're satiated, and then if they don't have the body fat down to what they want, like focus on the workouts, or would you think would you try to reduce? I know you're different in the sense that you can eat a ton of food and you're trying to build muscle and maintain the mass that you have.
Yeah.
But if you have clients that, first of all, the diet recommendation, and then would there be any caloric considerations if there's some sort of extra fat that they're trying to burn off?
Yeah, like I think reducing calories would definitely be like a last resort sort of thing for me if I was in my recommendations, and it usually is. Uh, Finding foods that are more filling and less energy dense is like a really good way of doing it, because I think a lot of the doctors that sort of we listen to, Dr. Greger especially, he always says that you're going to eat the same weight of food every day, if you don't focus too much on what you're eating and calorie restricting. So, having more salads, more fiber-rich foods is it's going to fill your stomach up. It's going to make you feel full, and in time, it's going to help you get more lean. So definitely, I think people want to, if you can, eating into satiation, that's going to be a good long-term strategy if you're eating the right foods. But if somebody's prone to sort of, overeating or, eating foods that are, consistently, not healthy, I think that, somewhat restricting calories is inevitable. But it's daunting, and nobody likes to sit there and count their calories and count their macronutrients and plug their stuff into Chronometer all the time. So anytime that's avoided, yeah, for sure, I'll try and avoid it and just have them eat, fiber-rich plant foods. But sometimes you can't get away from it.
Yeah, I like the calorie density approach. So like you might recommend like avoiding bread and some of the higher flours and breads and stuff, and nuts and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure the refined grains, I'm not a big fan of. I don't do well on breads. I'm not like a celiac, and I try not to be one of these like pretentious like, oh, I don't eat gluten because it's like the fashionable thing. But it doesn't agree with me, and I don't find that it is that it's in a lot of healthful like type foods. If you're eating like completely whole grains and old grain bread and that sort of thing, and you do okay on that, yeah, I guess so, okay. But for me, it's always like whole foods for the win. I never have to, I never have to think about the quality of it really. I mean, of course, organic is always best and trying to find farmers market food, but I'm not sitting there reading labels like is enriched flour the first ingredient, or is it white flour, or is there a bunch of thickeners and binders and stuff in this? I mean, if I'm just eating brown rice, if I'm eating quinoa, if I'm eating yams, beans, I never have to think about the ingredients. So I definitely like that approach. What was the second part to that? Oh, the nuts and seeds. Um, I I don't eat. Yeah, I think people can get carried away with the nuts and seeds, that sort of thing. I don't. Um, I think there's some definitely like good nutrients in it. Nuts and seeds are full of zinc, which is men especially we need a good amount of zinc, and you find selenium in it, that sort of thing. But I try not to be too reductionist with the nutrients. And if someone just loves them and they're going to be eating nuts and seeds over grabbing a chocolate bar or grabbing a coffee and a donut on their break, I think it's a great thing. For me, I'm not a huge snacker, so I will put I'll put some sunflower seeds on my salads, but I don't make a point to sort of eat them throughout the day. And I think nut butters too are like, that's a pretty wild concept if you think about nut butters, like how much nuts and like how many almonds and how many peanuts you can eat if you just eat like a few spoonfuls of nut butter. It's like it's pretty astounding. If you've ever made your own nut butter in a Vitamix or in a food processor, you know how many almonds it actually takes to get like a cup or 2 cups of nut butter. And if you think naturally how hard that would be for us to attain that many calories, like if we actually had to climb up this almond tree and get these almonds down and crush them open with like a rock, and then get it into some sort of some sort of bowl, I guess, or on rocks or whatever, and grind it up to make a nut butter. I mean, we'd be expelling a ton of calories to do that. So it's really, you got to think about what nature sort of has provided with us, and the calorie expenditure that you would have to put out to get these foods. If that makes any sense.
Yes, that makes sense. I find
So
that.
yeah, I mean, I love peanut butter, and I'm not, I am human, and easing,
Love peanut butter.
but I definitely like try and limit it. And if I find that I can't, if I find that I'm eating too much of it, I do notice pretty quickly that I start losing a bit of definition in my abs, and that's the first place I see it. So I try to cut that back a little bit.
Yeah, I think that there's a like kind of the reductionist thing, but I think superfood aspect to it where. Because I've heard people recently talking about nuts, and you need the zinc or whatever it is, and it's like for any nutrient or vitamin or mineral, you got to eat the one that has the most of it. Like a lot of plants have omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6, but we have to eat the flaxseed and the chia. Like you have to find the thing that has the most of it, and then and then selenium is in all sorts of foods. But what do you got to do? Well, you got to eat a Brazil nut. Which is crazy in my mind because not everybody can get those around the world in history. But so that's one aspect. I want to just the fact that there's this concept that you need that most dense food that has that particular, instead of just having all sorts of food that provide a smaller amounts. That's the one thing. And then the other thing is the fact that when they say low fat, there's a negative view towards it. But the thing is, nobody understands, or not nobody, but not a lot of people understand how much we actually need, right? Like if you eat plant foods, you might get 10 or 15% fat, just naturally. Like rolled oats have 18% fat. And then potatoes only have, say, 1%. So when you average a bunch of stuff out, you could be at 10 or even 15% without any, overt fats. But because they call that low fat, it's perceived as not enough fat. So now we need more than that. Like when people say we need fat for our brain or fat to to absorb some fat soluble vitamins and minerals. It's like, well, how much? If you ask them, how much fat do we need for that? Like they have no idea. So it's kind of just a weird thing where the 10 or 15, even though that could be our natural amount that we need just to function, is perceived as too low, and we have to add these fats. And I think people like fat, so it's kind of a drive to sort of justify eating more fat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one for sure.
I do enjoy guacamole and peanut butter and stuff like that, but it's done. You have to keep it. For me, I have to be careful, and I'm not doing it because I need a certain nutrient or something. It's just enhances something like a burrito, but I try not to go crazy with that stuff. Let's see. Protein powder supplements. What are you taking, and what's your advice on that aspect, which is a sensitive area?
Yeah, no, it totally is for me. And I wish that I could say like I never touch the stuff, but I wouldn't be being totally honest there. I work at a sort of natural a supplement shop. It's kind of a unique shop where it's a sort of a blend between like a supplement shop, like your average sort of Popeyes, whatever, and then a natural health food store as well, where we have things like we sell flax seeds and we sell ashwagandha and we sell rhodiola and all natural protein powders and stuff like that. So it's around me all the time, and we get samples. We get people that they'll try the product once and they'll return it. And I see a tub of rice protein powder that's just gonna go into the garbage because everyone seems to love like the whey and no one seems to care too much about the plant-based ones around. So those ones seem to get thrown out a lot. So yeah, sometimes I'll take them, and I try not to worry too much about my protein intake, but there's always that sort of little little bird at the back of my head that's saying, if you had a little bit more protein, you might have more muscle. And although I know, from what I've researched and studied that, I'm getting enough of it, I still, I'll find myself adding a half a scoop or a third of a scoop or whatever of a protein powder every once in a while to my smoothies. And mainly because I like, some of the products, the vanilla ones, I just like how they taste. So I find like in a 1 liter or 2 liter smoothie, I'll add like maybe 15 grams of protein powder and an additional 7 grams of protein, which isn't a whole lot. And if I wasn't working at the store, I don't think it's anything that I would ever invest money in. I definitely wouldn't. I'd much rather buy, the whole food. I'd much rather buy hemp seeds. I'd much rather just add beans to my smoothie, or frozen peas or whatever. But because it's available to me and it's free, and I always get people asking me at the store that I work at, like, what is this one like? Does it mix up well? How does it taste in smoothies? So I do try them every once in a while. Do I think it's healthful? I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not a scientist. I haven't tested these products to make sure they're exactly what they say they were. It's a fairly unregulated industry. But I am I'll only take the best of the best, really, the organics and that sort of stuff. If there's a Vega product, I trust them enough that I'll use that. But then as far as other things go, I mean, supplement-wise, B12 for sure is something that I take. I can't say I'm all that consistent with it, but I haven't had any problems, and I've had blood tests done, and my levels are just fine. My girlfriend, actually, she just had a blood test done a couple weeks ago, and she's been really casual with her B12, like even more so than me. She doesn't like taking any supplements. She's quite a purist, and her B12 levels were high. Like they were at the very high end of the scale. I think they were 500 or 600 units, which is pretty high. And I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but we go and we get spring water from a spring that's nearby, and we drink completely raw, unfiltered spring water. And I know that natural, unfiltered, unprocessed water has a certain amount of B12 in it. I've heard varying reviews on whether or not it's enough to actually get the right levels of B12 that you need, but it seems to be helping us out. But I do have, is this right here? Yeah, I do have like a sublingual, like a liquid by Laura Naturals, where you just need 15 drops of that, and you just keep it under your tongue. I'll do that. Like I keep it on this table here just so I remember. Otherwise, I would never remember. But I'll do that a few days a week if I can remember, and just make sure I hold it under my tongue for a good amount of time to absorb it. But beyond that, like pre-workout, occasionally I'll do like the Vega pre-workout energizer. I do like that one. I find I do need a little bit of a kick, and it's become a little bit habitual for me where I sort of, if I don't have it, I find my workouts aren't quite as strong as they could be. But I don't drink any caffeine or anything like that, so it's a very mellow stimulant, and I find it does help me through my workouts. Beyond that, anything, any of the sort of high caffeine pre-workouts and the vasodilators and that, I don't never any of that sort of stuff. It's like everyone always asks about like creatine. I've definitely like dabbled in it before because I was really interested as on a plant-based diet, we don't get any creatine externally. It's not in plant foods, it's in meat, and we make it in our own bodies, and we make enough to for all the processes that we need to build muscle, for all our enzymes, that sort of stuff. But we don't, when you're eating meat, you do get a considerable amount more of it. So of course I was curious, and looking it up, it is still a vegan product. It is synthetic, which doesn't necessarily make it like awesomely healthy, but it is still vegan. So I have tried that before, and you definitely like, it puffs you up. You get a little bit more, more size. It takes a couple of months to work, but it does help. So, I mean, I've done that before. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's, maybe good for a 1 or 2%, maybe 3% sort of gain. I don't think anything that anybody else would notice, but you yourself looking in the mirror every day, yeah, you might notice it. But beyond that, branched chain amino acids and that sort of stuff, I mean, amino acids, they're everywhere. They're in our food. So, no, nothing. So it's not nothing that I take.
Yeah. What about vitamin D?
Kind of a long-winded answer, but
Vitamin
hopefully
D?
that answers
No,
it
it's
for you.
good. What about vitamin D at all?
Yeah, vitamin D. Yeah, that's another one. I do take vitamin D occasionally, and I'm terrible at taking things. But that was one thing that came back in my my girlfriend's blood test that she was a little bit low in. Here in Vancouver on the West Coast, we don't get any sun pretty much from like I don't know. All through the winter for like the 8 months, other than like the summer months, there's really not a lot of sun. And as much as I can be outside, I don't think that I'm getting enough. So I do supplement it. I take the Garden of Life vitamin code. As much as I've looked into it, it's D3. It's a vegan product, and there's also another one that if I don't have that one, I'll take there's an AOR product that I think it's made from lichen. And it's a D3, and so I'll take that. It's not the cheapest that's out there, but I do, I think vitamin D is important. It's something that I always battle with, though. It's like, it's not a natural thing for us to be absorbing that much sun in the winter time, but it's also not a natural thing to be eating like this many bananas throughout the winter as well, right? So I don't know if, eating tropical fruit and vitamin D absorption has any link. There's a doctor that's actually in town here, in North Vancouver, and he came to our school one time, and he just did this big talk on the link between eating tropical fruit in the winter and your lack of absorbing vitamin D. And there was no science behind this, at least that he mentioned, but there was a lot of his sort of anecdotal evidence, and he was saying that if you're eating tropical fruit in the winter, or any time, tropical fruit basically stimulates your body to absorb vitamin D through your skin and excrete it as well. So as I'm eating, in his theory, I don't really buy into this at all. I think that your body doesn't know if you're eating tropical fruit or locally grown fruit or apples or whatever. But this was his theory that your body sort of will not take in as much vitamin D if you're eating tropical fruit because it assumes that it's in a tropical place. Not sure why I went off on that tangent, but I thought it was an interesting subject, and I'm always a little touchy when someone starts telling me not to eat so many bananas, so I had a lot of questions.
Yeah, vitamin D is still a tricky one for me because there's Dr. Pam Popper. A lot of vitamin D is like, it doesn't cause the problems, the health problems. It's a consequence, like of people that have poor health, their vitamin D levels are low.
Right.
And there's a lot of studies that show it's not really helpful. And you're trying to replace sunlight with a pill.
Yeah.
And Dr. McDougall shows this, he shows the globe and you could say, well, people in the north and south have low vitamin D and the health issues, but it's also diet related because a lot of North Americans, Europeans, they have that bad diet, like a Western diet. And people originally in the equatorial regions, had the rice and the potatoes and things like that. So I'm still fairly hesitant to. I'm hoping that like when I get sunlight, especially in the spring and summer, that I store it, and I can use that over the winter. So at this point, I'm not taking vitamin D, and I am inside a lot. And even if you go out in the winter, like we have a sunny day today, and I take a walk, the sun's not as high in the sky. It might not be as effective, but that's the one that I'm on the fence, and I'm generally try to avoid any types of supplements other than like B12. And I'm on my own well water. I kind of live in a some semi-rural area. I'm on my own well. I mean, there's a filter, like a physical filter, and a water softener, but I'm not necessarily relying on that for B12. But I did have mine checked, and it was fine. That was 10 months into the lifestyle. Dr. McDougall says if you've been doing this for 3 years, that's when you got to start looking at the B12. But one other quick question before we finish up, since I noticed the fruit and you mentioned it, a lot of us are doing a starch-based diet. We're getting a majority of our calories from starch, and Dr. McDougall does limit fruit to like 1 to 4 fruits, generally speaking. What's your take on fruit? Do you eat it whole? You have smoothies as well, you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a ton of bananas, and they think I'm absolutely crazy at the grocery store when I go there and I buy cases every couple of weeks. But I don't feel like I eat that many bananas. Like, I'll eat, or even that much fruit. Like, definitely, my breakfast is always a big smoothie, 6 or 8 bananas with some dates, some, a bit of flax seeds, some spinach, that sort of thing, hemp seeds. And I'll have a huge smoothie in the morning. I just feel the best off of that. I digest it really quickly, and then I can get to my workouts. Or if I work out really early in the morning, I can have that right after my workout and absorb it just fine. But then from then on, throughout the day, I pretty much, I'll eat oatmeal as sort of my second breakfast. I'll do, like a rice stir fry or potatoes and yams and a salad for lunch. And then the same sort of thing for dinner, like just last night I think we had a big, like a lentil stew that I made and with some potatoes on the side. So, I mean, I don't listen to any necessarily like the raw till 4 lifestyle or whatever, but I like having a raw breakfast. I find it help getting a lot of fruits in me early in the day feels good, and I feel pretty energized. But I don't sit there and mono meal bananas for the whole day or whatever. My fruit intake naturally goes up in the summer, but I think just because I'm out of the house and it's really easy to sort of grab a handful of apples or a handful of bananas and throw them in my bag rather than having to steam up potatoes and take them out on a hike and that whatnot. But I do I combine the two, and if I were to say most of my diet would definitely be starches, mostly rice. And lentils, peas, beans, potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been, for the past almost 3 years, I've been doing this and helping people. And a few times I've experimented with smoothies in the morning. I don't do huge ones, but I was doing a little bit bigger ones, and I started having, bloatiness and stuff like that. And so now I keep the bananas a bit lower and put more other things, greens and that. But I'm about to launch an ebook called Starch Plus Diet, which I've called Starch Plus, basically because I love Dr. McDougall. It's been amazing for my life and many people. But the one area that I don't totally agree with is the fruit. Now he says it's simple fruit, it's simple sugars, it digests quickly, it's addictive in the sense that people can eat that. I don't really ascribe to that. And it's partly because I experimented. It's easy to. If you're on a certain lifestyle and somebody says something else, you could say, well, that's not approved or that's not healthy, or you smash all the fiber with a blender or whatever. But when you actually do it and you see how you feel, it becomes a personal experience for you. And that's what I did. Like when I had a smoothie, at first I was like, oh, you can't have more than 4, and you're supposed to eat your food whole. And I was very dogmatic. And then I started having a smoothie, like, strawberries and some bananas and greens and some flaxseed. And I really enjoyed it. And there's people like you and others that if you're doing a workout, like sometimes if I eat a big bowl of oatmeal, it's great that it lasts for 3-4 hours, but you also have that full feeling, and you're trying to do workout on a full stomach. Which if you're going to work and you're sitting on the desk, that's one thing. But if you want to do a workout, you don't really want that.
Yeah.
And so I called it Starch Plus because I have a section where I talk about things that you can do beyond just sticking to starch and a limited amount of fruit. And that could be even that could be a whole bunch of oranges or something. It doesn't have, or even bananas whole. It doesn't have to be a smoothie per se. But I wanted to give the option because everyone kind of adheres to, I'm doing Starch Solution, I'm doing Eat to Live, or I'm doing Raw Till 4. And you have to stick generally within those guidelines. And the one thing I do like about a starch-based diet is it makes you understand that starches have the calories. But bananas can have like 100 plus or minus as well. So it's kind of similar to a potato. And when you eat enough of them, you can actually be satiated for a fairly good chunk of time. Like it's not like you eat a banana, 5 or 6 bananas, you're not going to be hungry an hour later in a lot of cases. So I wanted to expand what was available to people who like starch but also enjoy eating fruit as well. But it doesn't have to be like you have to eat fruit before 4 o'clock or anything like that. It can be any time of day. And some days you can have oatmeal if you want. It just depends. So,
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, like I don't have an issue with fruit myself. I don't do it every day, but I definitely notice it's easy to digest and it's great if you're going to do some exercise.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so just to give people some information, like what's your website and what kind of services or things do you have to offer in case they want more information on you and having you help them with their nutrition and exercise?
My website is simnettnutrition.com. It's like SIMNETT nutrition.com. And you can find me there. And obviously you put the link down below for, as you mentioned, for the YouTube, but it's youtube.com/SimnettNutrition. And it's Simnett Nutrition everywhere, on Instagram, on Facebook as well. I'm most active lately on my YouTube channel. I think people are seeming to, respond really well to my videos and they kind of like my style. So I've been putting a little bit more effort into that than I have in into my Facebook page or into my Instagram account. But I post a lot of food on there if people want to see sort of what I'm eating. I put a little bit more of my food on there than I do on YouTube. Beyond that, I'm a certified nutritional practitioner, so I just basically help people, get to their goals through nutrition and exercise. And I'm not a personal trainer yet. I plan on getting that certification soon because I've realized that it's sort of people always want that as well. Like it's hard to change people's minds about nutrition. You really have to find the right person who's really willing to work with their nutrition. But it seems like everybody wants to know, like what is your workout routine and how can I, better my workouts to get a better body. So I know that's going to be in the near future. I'm going to be getting that. But until then, I kind of have to be a little bit careful with like my wording as far as like how I recommend exercise routines and that. I know like everybody on the web, trainer if not, is giving their workout plan. So I do plan on having a really simple one that I'm going to put out in the near future. That's going to kind of be like what I've done and my calisthenics routine and how I weight my with a little bit more detail than what we've gone on today. How I do my workouts with, weighted reps and drop sets and that sort of thing as well. But in the meantime, just get at me from my website. There's a link there to my email. I have like an ebook that I just kind of put out, and it's like my 7 health myths that I had to overcome before achieving like great health. Basically, what it is. I can't remember the catchy title that I had on it now. It's like shorter than that. I wish I could remember, but I think it's my top 7 health myths is what it is. I have a link for that on there as well. And it's basically just going over the things that I had to sort of get over in my mind before I could really sort of let go of those sort of dogmatic approaches and the reductionist approach of nutrients and just sort of like hammer forward and feel really good about my health and feel really empowered and achieve the goals that I was looking for.
Yeah, well, that's great. I'll put some links in the description below. And I recommend everybody check out your channel and if they want to hit you up for some coaching or more advice, I think that'd be great. I want to show that I wanted to show the viewers that people that like you who are building muscle and I mean, there's a lot of people in the plant-based world who are runners and cyclists and more like long distance type people. Exercise and sports. There's people doing jiu-jitsu and all that. And I wanted to show, I also want to show that we can build muscle. And you're a great example, like with your 2-year transformation video that people should check out as well. And, I'm really happy that you're out there spreading the message as well, putting a plant-based and a vegan message out there for everyone. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Awesome. No problem. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Will.
Okay, thanks, Derek. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, cool. Chat soon.
See
Bye-bye.
you, man.